Wait, are you going to actually answer the most stressful question in all of our lives right now?
Of course I am. That's why we're here, Matt.
I am glad to be here, and I hope the rest of you are too. Matt Robeson, Mike Morton, financial life planning, and for me, this is the stress one. This is the big question that weighs on the back of all of our minds, all of us who are experienced dads. What's the calculation you did recently that we have like a century of fatherhood between us?
That's right. A century.
You have too many kids. Me?
That's too many kids.
Well, one of us, at least one of us.
At least one of us.
So, of course, what you start to stress about is how are you going to pay for the insanely high cost of college? And I guess we should say up front, this is a good problem to have, right? If your kids are going to be able to go to college, that's great. And if they're going to be able to go to the kind of college that's going to, bleed you almost literally, that's a good problem to have. But
I mean, I
it's
guess. As far as problems and puzzles go, it's not a bad one, but holy smokes, these are big numbers, Matt. It's it's not fun and looking forward to.
What kind of numbers? All right, maybe we should give a trigger warning up front here.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to talk about dangerous, upsetting concepts like how much college costs in the future. Mike, go ahead, lay it on us. How much does college cost these days?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
There are colleges that now cost over $100,000 per year. All in.
Year.
Yeah, tuition plus room and board plus everything has now broken six figures, over $100,000 every year, Matt.
Now, that's not all colleges.
No.
Yeah.
So that's the high end. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the average?
Right. So the average is public in-state public colleges cost about 30,000. Let's just round it to about 30,000. That includes the tuition plus room and board plus books, supplies, kind of all in, about 30,000. Public in-state.
Public in-state.
Yep.
So we're both Massachusetts residents, and so if our kids went to UMass, which they could, it's about a mile from my house.
Yep.
Well, there are many UMasses, but if they went to the one in Amherst, which is I don't want to diss the rest of them. It's the good one. Okay.
It's the good one.
Yeah. The rest of the country doesn't care about what this little feud that I'm talking about here. So if they went to that, we're talking $30K a year all in.
Well, that's a good point. No, look up your college. You can obviously do a quick Google search to find that out. This is the national average.
A national average.
National average of public in-state. But you bring up a really good point, Matt, that one of the things that we'll talk about is using your local college or college of your choice, whatever resonates with you, as a price point to shoot for. All right. So you could use that UMass, Amherst. Hey, we're going to afford to send our kids to a public in-state school. Let me look up the most, the closest one or the one that resonates with me, and use that current price. So the national average is about 30,000 for public in-state.
I see. And what if you're aspiring? There's so many Simpsons jokes here. It's like, I'll probably end up at Vassar. I've had enough of your Vassar bashing. What about your Vassars? What about your kind of higher end? So, I'm going to say something nice about Vassar. What about your higher end privates?
Right. So private schools, again, the national average for private schools is going to be about 60,000. All in. All right. Now, there's a big range in both the public, and then we didn't get out of state is kind of in between those. Okay. And there's a big range when you look up particular colleges. That 60,000, might be 40,000 at some, but it's definitely going to be 75,000, at other ones.
Wow. All right. Well, no, you're right. We should also hit the public out of state because that's kind of, I'm guessing that'll be between.
It's right in between there.
Goalposts.
The national average is about 45,000 for those. So kind of right in between those two.
So just do a quick, we will spare people a ton of math here, but just do a quick, that's the numbers now, but you got to skate to where the puck is going. I mean, education inflation, people have been all stressed out about regular inflation, but for years now, the annual average price increase of a college education has outstripped the price rises for everything else. Is that still going on?
Yeah, it's been going on, but I can't tell you the next like 10 or 20 years if it will continue.
Right.
Now, I don't want to get into this podcast on all of that side of things, the cost of colleges, how it's gone up, the reasons why it's gone up, what people pay is not the sticker price. Lots of great information on that. I think we've had an episode similar, with some of those things on it. Maybe we'll do another one. Today, what I wanted to get at is the question I get asked all the time. Okay, Mike, we know college is expensive. We've got young kids. I know college is going to be very expensive. Education is really important to our families. So we want to be able to support our kids in their education. So, Mike, how much should we save for college?
That's the most stressful question, is this gnawing sense that because of those numbers you just gave us, that you're not going to be able to do it. It's just so much, and the more kids you have, the worse a problem you have. I guess that's a generalizable statement. I do want to just float for people the idea that they'll want to hang on to the end of the show, because we'll explain why optimizing is for suckers. So if you're the kind of person who stresses about what's the perfect plan for questions like this, we will relieve some of that anxiety by telling you why you don't need to stress about getting everything perfect. But all right, we've given the top end prices. Before you give the answer, the big answer, I want to tease this out just a little longer of like, what's the right number?
Right.
Let's just do a little bit more mechanics. Let's talk about the where. Like, what are the mechanics of savings for college? We're talking about 529 so much. I assume that's one of the big ones.
Yeah, it's going to be the 529. I just wanted to cover this briefly, like where to save for this. I definitely highly recommend using 529s if this is earmarked for future education or even current education. But there's also places like Coverdell. They were more popular before the 529s. You can also save in custodial accounts for your kids that are owned by the kids. That can be used for college. You can also just save in a regular brokerage or saving account. Sometimes I have clients do that because it's more flexible. You don't get the tax benefits of the 529, but you don't have the the rules around the 529s. So lots of different places that you can save. But again, for today, I'm just going to say put it in the 529. We're going to come up with a plan, how much to save. Let's go ahead and throw that into a 529 account.
If you're worried about, well, aren't there downsides? Like, what if I don't need it? Blah, blah. I just commend the episode we did a couple months ago about this new superpower way to become your own education foundation forever and establish a dynasty. I love that so much. We won't go back into it. Just go back in the feed and check out this dynasty thing. It's incredible. It's really amazing. All right. So those are the accounts you could do. Do you want to just give people the answer?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go into the answer.
All right. We're not teasing this anymore.
No, that's it, man. We're already like 8 minutes in this episode.
Or getting into it. All right.
Hit it. Anyway.
All right. So what's the answer? How much do I need to save?
How much a lot more than you are. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
That's why I'm stressed.
I know. Exactly. So there's three different types of people. All right. And so let's break it down into the answer is going to be different depending on where you fall. All right. First is at the low end, maybe you want to save for retirement first. Okay. So I need to say that it's in, everything that I say, you need to save for yourselves and for your retirement before saving for your kids. So at the low end, maybe you're already saving.
The oxygen mask drops on the plane. You put it on yourself before you put it on your kids, which what kind of an ogre does that, by the way? I mean, like, no, you shouldn't do that. Put it on your kids. What are you, self-centered?
No, but your own oxygen mask first.
All right, but you're telling us save for your own retirement before you save your kids' education. I like
this. It's a pretty important one. So definitely recommend that. So if you're already saving for retirement, you might not have a lot left over to save for college. All right. And that's totally fine. It is what it is. So you just save what you can. So we start there. If you just have, hey, I've got an extra few $100s a month or a couple thousand a year that I could throw into some, savings for them down the road, that's fantastic. Just go ahead and do that. All right. The numbers are so big anyway. It's like throwing a little bit in the bucket, but every little bit helps. All right. So if you find yourself like, hey, I'm saving for retirement, we're enjoying our life, and I have a little bit left over, just save that little bit. Okay. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, I definitely work with clients that have quite a bit of resources. And so they're like, how much can we save? Here, I might recommend, depending on your values, that you go all in and I've got a young child, I've just, new parent, or maybe my child's 3 or 5, go all in and you can super fund these 529s, and you can put in up to 5 years worth of gift tax savings, we say. It's $90,000 per parent. So if you have 2 parents, you can put in up to $180,000 one-time contribution into a 529. And that might be something that you want to consider doing. It's a really big number. It applies to some people, not everybody, but it's at the other end of the spectrum where you can put in $180,000 into a 529 that will grow and compound, and be over maybe 600,000 by the time your child's in school. And that might cover some of those private schools at that time.
So, all right, read back. If you're on one end of the kind of available cash flow spectrum, just do what you can. Like, kind of let go. Don't entirely let go and say, it doesn't matter, because the little bit does help, because what we're talking about is when they're actually going to college, the way they're going to have to pay for it is loans. There is interest with these things. And so, saving that, even if it's a tiny part of the burden, is worth it. So if you don't have a ton of cash available, do what you can. If you have a ton of cash available, do it all, because the tax benefits are so high of doing it through the 529s, and the future savings from foregoing those loans is so great. It's worthwhile. It pays off. So those are your bookends.
That's correct. And we can spend a little more time on the second one if we have it at the end. I find there's a couple other reasons to do it. Yes, you might be overfunded, like, no doubt. Maybe they go to a much lesser cost college. There's something else 15 years from now. You never know. But then you get back to the 529 Dynasty episode. You get back to the escape hatch where you can put some into the Roth IRA. You can roll it to other, family members, et cetera. What I find is that for certain clients, they value education. They have the resources. It's a set it and forget it. Right. It's like what we talked about, a couple episodes ago, the one thing, like, hey, just, you get to procrastinate. You get to, like, just do it one time and then never think about it again. We'll check in every couple of years, be like, oh, this is great. It's growing. It's fantastic. I don't have to think about it, And so I find there's other benefits to doing that, right? Doing it that way.
But I imagine that this is like a normal distribution, right? Like, and so most people are going to cluster more toward not either of those goalposts, but kind of in the middle. Like, you have some more than minimal resources, but you don't have infinite.
That's correct. Yeah, most people might find themselves somewhere in the middle. That's right, Matt. So here is my rule of thumb. There is a rule of thumb that says about a third, a third, a third. All right. This is the one I used to use. I don't use it as much anymore. The 3/3 go like this. You pre-save 1/3 of the future college expenses. You pay another third of that college expense from your current income while your kid is in college. And the final third are loans that the student will take on. So student will pay for 1/3. All right. So that's so then the answer is you're pre-saving 1/3. So you look up the college costs and you say, I expect about this kind of college, and I'm going to pre-save into the 529 1/3 of that. So you just do a little calculation and figure out if you're going to do it one time, you're going to do it monthly, save monthly, and try to pre-save 1/3. Now, I personally have started recommending more 50%. And this is just because of the general people that I tend to work with have a little more income. They're in pretty good jobs right now. Their kids are young. They're trying to be flexible for the future, but also save. And so I typically end up about pre-saving about 50% of future college costs. So you calculate the future college costs and work backwards and figure out what that 50% is going to be.
All right. So that's the answer. I've got like a bunch of rapid fire questions about this to throw at you. So first of all, this is per kid, right? You're doing this for each kid, even though you know that on the back end, you could move money from one 529 beneficiary to another.
That's correct. This is for each child. Yep. I mean, unless you have a favorite child and you don't want to save for the other ones, you could do that. You could do that too, Matt.
I was literally just having this conversation with my eldest child, and she and I were saying, that it's a shame that they've got all these weird classes they do that I generally support in their school. Like they have technology literacy, and they have things about like good citizenship and sort of like, how to be like a caring person, which I guess I'm in favor of. And I was saying it's really a shame that they don't have a financial literacy course. That seems really, really super valuable and maybe something you should do for all of America. And I was like, well, we could kind of do our own version of it. Let's crack open your 529 account that I've established, and let's just look at it together. And you should ask me some questions. And it really does beg the question, because there's more in that one, because she's the oldest. So like, does that suggest that she's the favorite? Anyway, this is my own personal psychology. So
right.
One question of these rapid fires that just I'm sure sprung to mind for a lot of people is, you said a third or 50%, somewhere in that range, but of what? Because we gave different costs up front. Are you kind of pre-selecting, like, here's how expensive a school that my kid will be able to afford, or how do you do that part of the calculation?
Two ways to go about it. And this is what, now we're starting to get in the nitty gritty. And there's so many little questions that, again, coming up with this precise number, how much do I save for college? What I'm trying to do is help you figure that out, because at the end of this episode, you want to have a plan that you can write down in a few bullet points and say, here's our plan. Now I have a plan and I'm working on the plan. And it makes you feel really great about, hey, I'm supporting my kids, I'm saving, I know how much it is, now I can budget, all these kinds of things. Okay. So there are a lot of moving parts, but at the end, we're going to get to an exact plan. So yes, you look up the colleges, the range of colleges that you think your child might go to. All right. Now this is hard. We said at the outset, is it 30,000? Is it 100,000? And then compound that over the next 15 years for your kid. And, you get these wild, very wild ranges. So you just have to pick something. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You just pick and what I find, of course, people gravitate to their own experience, like we do in everything in life. So people that went to a private school, they're gearing, heading towards that way. People that went to public schools, they usually kind of pick those numbers. So that's definitely a way to go about it. But pick something and say, this is what we plan on doing.
And if your seventh grader gets a B- in math, you bring that number right down.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, now they're not getting in, so forget about it.
Yeah, right. Or you just write them off entirely. The non-joke version of that is, I don't know what the average age of, having kids is these days. Let's just say that you're in your late 20s, right? When you have your first kid, your income level could change dramatically over the 18 years or so between when the kid is born and when they go off to college, and sort of your ability to save will change. How do you figure that out with people? Like, are you reviewing these things annually with your clients, or, how much adjustment do you need to make?
That's a really good question. I don't get that one a lot, but here's the answer I would give you is no, we're going to have a plan. You said, like, I want to pre-save $200,000. Okay. By the time they're in college, it's 200,000. So I use a calculator. I need to save $500 a month. And so you do 500 a month starting right now. And that 500 isn't going to change. It's going to be 500 a month for the next 10, 20 years. But the thing is, Matt, as your child goes from 1 year old to 5 years old to 10 years old, your income's going up, but so are your expenses. And you know this firsthand, just as I do. The bigger the kid, the bigger the expenses.
Well, and also,
that'll eat up your income.
But if you preset, let's say $500 a month, $3,600 a year, let's say that's like, I don't know, like 65,000 or so over the course of 18 years, sure. If I had started that when my eldest child was born, that would have been like, wow, that's like a year and a half of college. And now it's not even 1 year of private college, for the top end. I just wonder if, can you do it? You can't do it as a percentage, is what you're saying. Is like, maybe you reevaluate that number, but.
Oh, well, you definitely want to reevaluate it over time just to see if you're on track, to see how things are going. Maybe things have changed. But again, what I find, Matt, is if we have a plan, write it down, get it automated, let's set it and forget it for a few years. You will feel great about making that decision, and you can always come back and revisit it. But at least now we're started.
let me do one more before we kind of wrap up on the topic. You said earlier that you fund your own retirement. We're kind of having fun with this. You fund your own retirement first. And we've done waterfall episodes before. That's also in the feed where you kind of do the order of operations of your first marginal available dollar for savings goes here.
Mm-hmm.
Your next goes there. I am in a situation, you know this, I don't want to turn this into my personal life story, but I'm in a situation where you and I had an offline conversation where I said, I know your general advice, but I think in my situation, given where I'm at on the savings for retirement trajectory and where I'm at on the savings for college trajectory, I need to switch this up and I need to start putting more into college and retirement. And it felt great because you ratified that for me.
Mm-hmm.
There are circumstances, people's mileage may vary. There are circumstances where the generalized advice about retirement before education may not apply. Is that true? Or am I really a unicorn here?
Yeah. No. First of all, you're definitely a unicorn, Matt.
I'm the prettiest.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah.
But of course, everybody could come to me with and say, "Here's my situation. Should I do it the opposite to the rule of thumb?" And the answer could be yes. It's totally fine. What I loved about what you just said is you had some thoughts in your head. You have sort of a plan. You kind of thought through it, and then you asked me about it. And we were able to talk through it. And then you got a thumbs up and felt great. You said, "Oh, it felt great," when you ratified the plan that I had. And that's what I find with most people. And this is why this episode is about having a plan. Because once you have a plan and start executing, you're on the path. You've got forward momentum. You've done something. You've put in some action in place. And it feels really good about supporting your family and your goals. So let's get to the action plan. One other thing before we do that, we said, how do you pick the number? So we talked about that. Pick the kind of school, use a calculator to figure out the number. The other way to go about it, if you're unsure, is to pick, or it might resonate, is to pick a local school. So we talked about that at the start. UMass, Amherst, maybe that's a school that you like, or it would be great if your child went there and you would love to fully support that. So I have clients that do that. They're out in California. So maybe it's one of the, University of California. So they'll pick a school and say, okay, it's $40,000 a year. We will pay up to $40,000 a year in today's dollars. And so they set, some goal, like this is what we will fund. And it's a great thing too, because once your kid is becoming a late teenager, you can start talking to them about that and say, hey, here's how much we've saved. Here's what we're going to spend. If you want to pick a different kind of school, you're going to be taking out loans. You have these wonderful conversations at that point. So first part of the plan, pick a number, pick a school, pick a type of school, pick a number, then get to a calculator, and we'll put a couple in the show notes. Get to a calculator that will help you figure out what the cost will be, if it's 10 years from now or 15 years or 18 years from now for your child, what the cost might end up being, and then how much. The calculators will tell you, of course, how much you need to save, either each month or as a one-time lump sum. And if you can, I recommend doing a lump sum because you have more time for the compounding growth. So that's the 1, 2, 3 steps for getting this plan into action.
Oh my gosh, your way is so much easier than my way. What I did is I listened to an earlier episode and I just figured out, like, look, here's our average spending, and therefore here's our available pool of funds to save. And I literally kind of, first I went with one version of a waterfall. It's like, all right, I'll give this percent of it to retirement, this percent of it to education savings. And then at a certain point I flipped it. And that's, it was closer to the version of whatever you've got, that's what you save. And I don't know, maybe my version is, maybe it's almost easier in a way because it's just like, it is what you have is what you put away. And that could be appropriate for some people.
Yeah. And your version is totally great. And again, it's having a plan and implementing it, knowing the plan. And what I like about yours is that you know your budget. See, a lot of people don't know the budget, Matt.
Oh,
they don't
I see.
know like how much is kind of
Right.
left, and then you have the allocation. So this is another way of starting. It's like, what's the school? Let me save, and then whatever I have left over, that's what I have to spend.
Right. That's another piece of your advice. That's probably what was in the back of my mind is, do your savings first, and then, you're going to consume whatever's left.
Right.
Part of what you're saying here is, in conclusion to this whole thing, it matters less having the perfect plan than having a plan. Is that right?
100%.
Well, that's a funny lead in to our final segment, which is optimization is for suckers.
Optimization
Mike,
is for suckers.
Tell everyone why optimization is for suckers.
Because, oh, geez, Matt, it's kind of like what you just said. Yeah. You read a lot, right? Everybody's inundated with like, oh, you got to optimize your morning routine. You got to optimize like the way you're doing this. And it's like, how about we just have a routine?
Right.
How about we be consistent with the routine or automate some part of the routine or have an environment that nudges you? The optimization part is great, of course, if you've been doing something for a while and you're like, oh, I want to make this more efficient. But the smartest thing to do is to have a plan and execute the plan consistently.
The best plan is the one that you'll implement. It doesn't, I find the external pressure that, you can read in a million listicles about how to get the perfect this and perfect that. That's a real term of art. Listicles? It doesn't sound good, but that's what it is. It's like they specialize in this on like Mashable. It's like, it's a listicle, like top 10 ways you can optimize your breakfast or whatever. It's like, what's the perfect workout routine for you? How about this? How about if you do any reasonable kind of exercise consistently, that's great. That's really, really great. And you're going to get 90% of the way there. It matters so much more that you're actually doing something. And consistency is a big one too. But yeah, I mean, I've had we've talked about even, like our new ideas. We were joking in a recent episode. It's like, here's our new amazing plan for our kids. You were going to make them breakfast. I was going to stop giving reminders. And it's like, well, those are great, great, brilliant plans. Are we going to be able to maintain them and implement them? Not so sure. So what's the value there? I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny you say the best plan is the one that you'll actually implement, because that's, we do financial planning. I work with a lot of other financial planners. We'll create plans, right, for clients. We have to come up with a plan that you're going to actually do, because most clients take the plan and they're like, oh, cool. And they'll do like 1 out of the 10 things. You're like, if you just did 4 or 5 of them, it'd be so much better. So like, how do I craft a plan that you will actually implement versus one that I'm trying to optimize, make it just right and all of these.
I bet you could do a whole show. We could do a whole show of like stories of, I crafted, this is what would get my client the most money. But that's not the plan we're going to give you. Because
it's pretty funny
to do it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny you say that. I have now tried to make things as simple as possible and let go of a bunch of stuff. Like, yes, do I feel you should put $2,237 in this account, in this investment, and then we'll revisit it 6.5 weeks later? Yeah, that would be perfect. Are you going to do that? No chance. So,
right.
It's that's like I either scrap the whole thing or I just make it super simple, one button, and it's good enough, and I know it will get done.
Actually, that hence the advice of, just say it's like $500 a month. And because if you do that, it's going to be pretty close and you're going to actually do it, as opposed to, all right, every 6 months, you need to recalculate.
You need to do this.
And
exactly.
It's like, never going to happen. All right. Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. We're going to end this episode. For Mike Porton, Matt Robeson, see you next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for joining us on Financial Life Planning. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to and rate the podcast on Apple iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a massive difference. If you have a comment or question, please email me, mike@mortonfa.com. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. This recording is for informational purposes only and should not be considered for investment advice. Opinions expressed are as of the date of recording. Such opinions are subject to change. I cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the data presented here.